Welcome back to Mohawk Global's sponsored Borderline Genius. With me is Rachel Marwood, co-hosting because Anthony didn't think it was important enough to show up to work today. But it's okay. This is round 2 with our favorite guest, John Esborn. I had some silly questions, much like the strangest cargo you've ever shipped, coming from the parcel world and then shipping furniture. Something in the middle. What was some really obscure, strange?
Well, we talked about the postal hub. This isn't something that we shipped, but it was an incident that happened. Had a supervisor come into my building, and so these sort operations were at night. And the supervisor came into my office in the building and said, "One of our employees can't breathe. She's having a hard time, and she might have been exposed to something in the packaging or whatever." And we had a gentleman was one of our supervisors who was an EMT, and I said, "Get Bill and get him with her and see what you can come, see what we can sort out, right?" Well, then, fast forward, not even that far, maybe 10 minutes, all of a sudden that supervisor that had come into me said, "You know what? I'm having a hard time breathing as well." And that one thing led to another, and this was probably in April. And we evacuate the building because we're not sure what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole sort operation stops. And everybody's outside. And it's the time of year that it's cold enough that people couldn't get their coats. They were just rushed out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow we came up with some school buses. I'm not sure why. Maybe we had a shuttle buses to the parking site because we didn't have enough acreage for people to park at work on site. And so, but we put as many people in that as we could to keep them warm and all that. But, the next thing you know, so this is around 11 o'clock, just before 11 o'clock. The next thing you know, we got a helicopter over here, a news helicopter over here, a news helicopter over there. We got another news van, pulled up to the front of the building, and they're cranking up the antenna, and all this stuff. And the only people left in the building were Bill, the EMT, the supervisor, and the woman who was the original one that thought she couldn't breathe. And now at some point, the driver of the truck that mail was being loaded onto, because this was inbound mail, and we would go out to divisional, I think they called them, whatever, out for another processing out into Pennsylvania, because that's where we were on the inbound mail. And so the driver was there. So and my wife calls, and Bill's like, "Yeah, no, Mrs. Esborn, I don't think he can really come to the phone right now." This was before cell phones, guys. This was right around cell phones. It was 1998, 99, right? And I don't think he's available to call right now. But my wife had seen the news, incident at postal sortation facility in Swedesboro, New Jersey. News at 11. And so this went on. They made the truck driver, the mail sorter, and the supervisor all go into our conference room and change out of their clothes and put on chemical suits or whatever. And I think Bill maybe as well. All in the same room.
Oh, just
think about that.
Oh no.
And
that's not the kind of podcast we have.
Yeah. And so this thing's going on, and they isolated the boxes that the stuff came from. And I'm getting calls and back and forth from people from that are calling in, because we're like, "Hey, the sort's done. We're stopped. We're not processing any mail." We had all these deadlines we were supposed to hit and cuts and all that stuff. And so finally they come out like, "Oh, really? That's what it was? Oh, okay." So I guess I did have a cell phone. I call my boss, or no, my boss's boss, the vice president, the president of Emory Postal. "Yeah, hey Jerry. Yeah, what? Oh yeah, no, we're all set. Everybody's going back in now." "Oh, what was it?" "Oh, sugar beets and sugar cane." Somebody had taken those out, the sugar beets in particular, out of the dirt, out of the ground, packed them in a box, and they bounce around in the box, in the dust and the dirt, becomes dust inside the box, and it gets out of the box. Nobody was hurt or anything. It's just they had breathed dirt, earth dust. And it was, it was that kind of stuff that would, again, 2 helicopters over the building, a van out front. We're the big news item. And I learned I had one other incident like that, similar with the press, was when I was in Syracuse, that made me always be careful when I was listening to a news story to make sure that the press was not out of control, whatever, that it was accurate news, right?
Right.
Anyway, so I don't know, that's strange cargo, but it certainly was it's an interesting memory and an interesting story. So
you had me concerned. I thought we were on an anthrax or some sort of story. I was like, oh boy. It's like what was
well, and of course, that's what we were worried about, right? And there was some, I will tell you how it ended up with the 4 people that had to change their clothes in front of each other in the conference room. Maybe turn around and close your eyes, but put it this way: nobody got married and nobody ended up dating.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's a story worthy of retaining here on our journey this afternoon, but there you go.
It's a good one.
I love it. So as far as having some exposure to a variety of different companies, whether it being online magnates and such, who would you say are some of the most famous people you've run into in the course of the work you've done?
2 people that when I was traveling, that I had an opportunity to fly on the same plane with. Didn't speak to him and didn't want to. I wanted to be respectful from a distance. Muhammad Ali. I came in on the plane. I literally was in Detroit, and I was literally, I think, the last guy on the plane. So I just I think they closed the gate behind me and rushed down the jetway and sat down. And the guy next to me said, "Did you see Muhammad Ali in first class?" I said, "No, I didn't even notice." And however, believe it or not, he ended up in baggage claim. Maybe with his chauffeur or whatever, but I'm down in baggage claim waiting for my bag, and there's Muhammad Ali. And I was probably looking at him from 150 feet away, 100 feet away. And it was just cool. That was just cool, right? To be in his presence. But, he was kind of into his Parkinson's at that point. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but he didn't, like, people would come up to him and he'd just pull something out of his suit jacket and hand it to him that people had autographed previously. So that was cool. It was just cool being in his presence. The other person that I flew with was Mike Ditka, the football coach and NFL, NFL player and football coach. And that was cool. And I'll tell you why it was cool. Was he just sat out with, he wasn't off in, the sky room or whatever they call it, he just sat out there with everybody else. And people, and again, I was maybe 30 feet from him, maybe 20 feet from him. And it was just cool to be around him, right? And so he was there. And again, people were coming up to him. And the poor guy, like, he got up when they called, first class to go sit. He got up, and I don't think he has any knees left, because to watch him get up and take those first couple of steps was brutal. And so then, he's in first class and I'm going on the plane. And so I have 2 older brothers, and my immediately older brother is a really big burly guy, and he's got big mitts, right? And I'm walking by, and so I was like, okay, let me see the size of Ditka's hands. I'm like, what? I said, Ed, he's got nothing on you, man. So that was those are the famous people that I flew with. I've been fortunate to be able to meet with CEOs, ocean carriers, and people like that. Of course, when you go from 0 to 60,000 containers, 50,000, whatever it was, you get people's attention. And I was very, very specific with the carriers we were using, whether they be dray carriers, I mean, all the different types of carriers. I said, if you want to do business with us, we're going to grow and I need access to the top of your company. And so Ralph Haben Janssen, Jeremy Nixon, Soren Skoo, who's retired now, but with Maersk, Ralph's with Hapag Lloyd, Jeremy's with O&E. They were all available to us. And Jeremy Nixon was very cool because we were in Singapore, myself and my boss, and he spent like an hour and a half with us. I didn't expect. He listened to the whole program we were laying out, what we were doing, all the kind of stuff I described in the first episode. And that was very cool that he was very present with us for that meeting.
Fantastic.
And so other than that, I got nothing.
Well, if I could help you, John, when somebody asks that question, it doesn't have to be accurate, but maybe an anecdote like, and I handed Mike Ditka some chewing gum. So, I saw he was struggling, so I handed him a stick of gum to make him feel at ease.
I carried out Lee's bags. Of his
Yeah.
bag.
Well, I would have stood there and I would have found his bag, pulled it off, and said, "All right, come get it."
But I mean, I don't know if other people think about it this way, but like, just how cool is that, right? That you get a chance to travel around, around him. He was such a big personality and so loved at the end of his life, after, being kind of a controversy. But you couldn't help but love the guy just because his personality was so jovial, or however you want to put it, right? So like, look, I left Wayfair. I went to this company called Perch, which Perch doesn't exist, but somebody purchased them. Which was an Amazon aggregator, which was they bought. We had $1 billion or all sorts of VC money that we could go out and buy people that sold on Amazon, and we would buy these smaller brands and aggregate them into a larger company. Those small guys aren't necessarily worried about staying in the lines on the road. And actually, the small entrepreneurs don't know there's lines on the road.
True.
And when you buy them and build a bigger company, now all of a sudden you have to be in compliance. And that created quite a challenge for items to still be profitable, if you will. If they were now, you had to go through the added cost of compliance. And so we struggled from there. And from there, I went to Overstock, which became Overstock Beyond. Started another NVOCC. And the cool part of that, because they were, again, using a lot of the same suppliers that sell on the Wayfair platform. And but the cool thing was, once you've done something once, then you get the opportunity to go, okay, I'm doing this again. How am I going to do it differently and better? Right. So one broker happened to be Mohawk again. And because many of those partners were already using Mohawk because they were set up back at Castlegate.
Right.
But I didn't source a operating system software like CargoWise. I used Mohawk's. And I didn't hire an army of people. I just went to Mohawk and said, how much per container if you manage the container and provide me with CargoWise? So I didn't have all, in terms of the world of being not asset based. I mean, you license the software, you're going to pay for it every month, and then you're going to pay an additional volume of dollars based on how many shipments you pass through it, right? And so we didn't have that overhead at all. I didn't have any employee overhead. It was a truly non-asset based environment where if we didn't have a container, we didn't have any cost. So that was very cool. That was taking that whole non-asset based step a step deeper. Reestablish my relationships with ocean carriers that I still was working with them when I was at Perch, because I handled the ocean procurement, and we had a fair amount. And then ultimately, believe it or not, ended up as Mr. E-commerce Canada for Beyond. I mean, I had Canada, and the P&L, the whole thing, not just logistics, and learned a ton, immense amount on how to make that business profitable.
So your time in Canada, real important question. You're in East Coast, you probably have a pretty strong affinity to Dunkin', but in
Yeah.
Canada, it's Timmy Hose. Are we?
No, Tim
Did
Hortons
they
all the way.
convert you?
Tim Hortons all the way. And
Well,
I live in Dunks country. I mean, I can go from my house, I can hit 3 Dunks in less than a mile.
Just wanted to make sure. I was curious which way
Yeah,
you ended up leaning.
yeah, yeah.
The
No,
audience wants
Tim
to know.
Hortons is great. Um, and so anyway, I'm trying not to be too boring here, but I ended up handling all of Canada. So I mean, I was like Mr. E-commerce for beyond Canada, and that was a blast, man. That was a lot of fun. And again, establishing things like non-asset based warehousing, duty drawback. People don't necessarily realize that if something is destroyed, not just in the U.S. but also in Canada, you can get drawback on the duty, right? And in e-commerce, there's a lot of stuff that gets destroyed. And established a parcel relationship with one of the final mile, set up a very unique uh, final mile parcel solution with Canpar, one of the carriers in Canada. Wonderful people, incredibly supportive and helpful, and just kind of came up with some ways of doing things a lot less expensive. And what else?
so I have a question for you. In those experiences of the e-com world, we tend to look at those situations as being on the brink of IT innovation, right? How do you see the evolution of technology influencing our industry as you've gone through those various?
That's tough, and people are gonna hear my answer and go, "Well, he's clueless. He's old and dusty, and the industry's passed him by." But
The dust off a sugar beet.
I don't think. Look, freight still needs to move.
Right.
I mean, you've got AI that can help read customs documents. You can help all those hands-on, really slow down things that really slow you down. You can improve those so there's fewer slowdowns and things move much more efficiently. But it's still a truck that's taking it to your home. And I always my joke would be, going way back when I was first starting the career, when I was driving a truck or loading that DC3, and I'm getting out of college, and I'm going, what am I going to do? And I just fell into this, and but I had the thought of, this is a pretty good place to make a career. I don't care how things change, even if it gets down to beam me up Scotty and you're beaming up freight, you still need a customs broker. You still got trade compliance, right? And I still think we're quite a ways away from beaming up freight. And when I say that, I say this, jokingly, but seriously, when I was in Syracuse, there was this company by the name of Smith Corona. I don't know how many people even remember that brand, but it was a huge brand. They had a free trade zone down in Cortland, New York. You couldn't get them to give you the time of day. What did they make? Typewriters.
Wow.
Ain't no Smith Corona in Cortland, New York anymore. So, in terms of career paths, I just always felt like, this is a place to make a career. If you advanced, if you're fortunate enough to work hard and be recognized and advance, then, I could raise a family, support a family, own my home, all that kind of stuff. Right. And so, as much as you can AI everything and streamline anything and make billing easier, you still have to store stuff on shelves, and you still have to transport it. Now, look, the AI and knowing where somebody's clicking and all that stuff and how that's done, sure, that's going to maybe help you get your product more visible to the individual buyer more quickly. Not to be redundant, but you still need to, in this case, a lot of goods still coming from Asia, and a lot of goods, going into a warehouse, and a lot of goods getting delivered final mile. Right. Yeah. I'll say I was never a fan of de minimis, because there was a lot of cheating going on in de minimis, and that's really why. And so until they could get it not be about cheating, it was tough for a company. I watched several suppliers for the furniture space marketplaces go out of business because they couldn't compete with the goods coming directly from China. I'm not
Okay.
necessarily a fan of the tariffs and things like that, but I do think that, now we have these goods that were businessmen in the US, and they had staffs and they had warehouses and they had employees, and they brought goods in container volumes where they paid duties. And now you have companies from other countries selling on the platforms whose profits aren't taxed in the United States, who employees aren't paid in the United States. There's no payroll taxes. Not that I'm about taxation, but everybody's worried about duties. I'm like, hey man, what about the jobs that were lost? Forget bringing furniture manufacturing back to the United States. I want to bring the high-end jobs back to the United States. It's not that I don't want them, but I like a cheap couch, right? An inexpensive couch. And on top of it, now those companies are non-resident importers that are in the US, and I get myself in trouble. But I know a lot of guys, a lot of really cool, nice guys that were selling in the marketplaces that aren't in business now. One of them's dad started the business, and it's really unfortunate. And so that is why I don't like de minimis. These Chinese companies and I pick up these Asian companies, these foreign companies are sending goods in under the $800. Meanwhile, the other guys that were here in the US brought container volumes in and had to pay duty on it, regardless of what the duty rate was, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm not a fan of de minimis. Anyway, but coming way back to the beginning of the conversation, goods still need to go in a truck to get delivered and container to get here, and that's really cool. Being creative that way is, to me, the fun part. And non-asset based warehouse solution in Canada. If I wasn't putting anything in the warehouse, I had no cost, and I only paid for that little cubic footage that my item was taking. I didn't have to pay for a whole pallet bay for a month at a time, and that was very cool. And then the drawback of the goods coming from the U.S. into Canada, there was drawback, damaged goods, drawback, and a lot of very, very, very cool things that could be done. And so that was my Canada experience.
Danielle, we need to have a third episode, and it needs to be John v. Kenton debating de minimis. Rachel, would you mind moderating that debate? That would be fun.
I think I would need to, yes.
That'd be fun. We better stay out. We better not be in the same room. So I'm on a member of Connect.org. I'm actually, when we get done here today, I'm heading to Newport, Rhode Island. Immediately, like I'm packed up and ready to go, other than my laptop. And Connect.org is a coalition of New England companies for trade. It's a trade organization in New England. We have representation on Capitol Hill, and I can tell you the vast majority of the people in Connect are not fans of de minimis, especially the really trade compliance focused people, because there was a lot of cheating going on. Right? If it's a level playing field, that's one thing. But it wasn't. And that, it just wasn't. Enough said. I've also been fortunate that I think you mentioned back at the beginning, Rachel, I'm also been blessed to be, I'm invited once or twice a year to guest lecture over at Mass Maritime, which is I live on Cape Cod. It's about 15 miles from my house. And it's one of the state level maritime academies in the United States. There's 5 of them. And then there's Kings Point, which is the federal academy. Really cool place, really bright young people. And I get to lecture, classes. And then also the dean of students of the business school was kind enough to ask me to be on the advisory board. And one year when I was there, we're going around the table and all these young folks, and they're in uniform, they're cadets, right? And so that just makes them look sharp, right? And you're going around to the table, and most of the people that are there as advisors are grads. And they get to me. I was kind of the last guy, and they're all like, "What is it you want to do when you graduate?" And they're all saying, "Well, I'd like to kind of stay in the area." And everybody's talking about different things, and I'd kind of like to stay in the area. When they get to me, I'm like, I have one suggestion for you. Do you want to stay in the area, potentially in the wrong job, or do you want to land the right job, even though it's in the wrong place? And my advice to you would be, take the right job in the wrong place, because it can have a dramatic impact on your career. Even if it allows you to come back, you're only in that job for a couple of years because it's your first job. You probably will only be in it for a couple of years. And maybe it allows you to return to the right job in the right place later on. But don't sit here in Massachusetts if you can't find the right role. Go around the world and go around the country, meet new people, expand yourself. And so that's kind of my mantra to them.
I love that.
It's fun. It's fun.
Fantastic. For the record, I'm not a de minimis fan in the expanded version. The original version, $200, that was reasonable. But when they expanded it to $800, that was where I just far too many opportunities for failure. John's like, I don't care, Ken.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm just
no. It's it's just maybe it needs to be a lower dollar amount. Here's the other thing, with regard to global trade. I believe I'm correct when I say this. We can't go own land in China, but yet Chinese companies. This is where I don't necessarily like the whole tariff thing, but even playing field is an even playing field, right? If you're going to buy land here and open up a business, I want to be able to do the same thing over there. If our de minimis is $800, which it was what it was, then yours shouldn't be $10, which I believe is what it was.
It is what it is in China, yeah.
Open your markets to us. And/or so when they were trying to decide what to do with de minimis, one option, which I was supportive of, was yours is ours. I mean, even Canada, northbound, it's 150 Canadian, which is like $105 northbound to $800 southbound. Yep. It's like, come on, man. It's like, let's just, equalize. Yeah. That's all.